spat between the US President Donald Trump and Zelenskyy, things are now looking a little better for the Ukrainian president. The Ukrainian president has garnered quite a bit of support from the majority of the EU leaders during the summit in London, focused on Ukraine's future and its relationship with Europe. He also met King Charles III. So these are the visuals. On one hand, the meeting that took place at the Oval Office, and remember, the Oval Office meeting turned out to be quite embarrassing. It ended with a spat, after which Zelenskyy headed to the United Kingdom, and this is the warm welcome that was accorded to him in the UK.
Дорогі українці, українки, повертаємось додому. Як підсумок цих днів, чітка підтримка Європи, більше єдності, ще більше готовності співпрацювати, всі єдині в головному, щоб мир був реальним, потрібні реальні гарантії безпеки. І це позиція всієї нашої Європи, усього континенту. Британія, Європейський Союз, Норвегія, Туреччина. Сьогодні ми скоординували наш. Звісно, ми усвідомлюємо важливість Америки. І ми вдячні за всю підтримку, яку ми отримали від Сполучених Штатів Америки. Не було такого дня, щоб ми не відчували цієї вдячності, бо це вдячність за збереження нашої незалежності. Наша стійкість в Україні, вона базується на тому, що роблять заради нас і заради власної безпеки наші партнери. Саме мир нам потрібен, а не вічна війна. І саме тому ми кажемо, що гарантії безпеки є ключем до цього.
So Zelenskyy speaking about the support that he received, but it was not also easy. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer rallied his European counterparts to shore up their borders and throw their full weight behind Ukraine as he announced outlines of a plan to end the Russia war. In fact, Starmer's exhortation to 18 fellow leaders that they need to do the heavy lifting for their own security comes just 2 days after the US backing of Ukraine appeared in jeopardy when the President, Donald Trump, lashed out at the Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and said that he wasn't grateful enough for American support. In fact, the UK Prime Minister used the opportunity as part of his broader effort to bridge the gap between Europe and the United States. Starmer, in fact, worked with France and Ukraine on a plan to end the war, and the group of leaders, mostly from Europe, had agreed on 4 things.
Well, first, in relation to last Friday, nobody wanted to see what happened last Friday, but I do not accept that the US is an unreliable ally. The US has been a reliable ally to the UK for many, many decades and continues to be. There are no two countries as closely aligned as our two countries, and our defence, our security and intelligence is intertwined in a way no two other countries are. So it's an important and reliable ally for us. The discussions we've had today, particularly the coalition of the willing, is on the basis that this is a plan that we will work with the US, and that it will have US backing. So that is the purpose of the plan, and that is why I spoke to President Trump last night before we developed the work on this plan.
In fact, the Italian Prime Minister and the Canadian Prime Minister have also stressed on the importance of the Western unity after talks on Ukraine.
Per carità, tutto può deflagrare, non è una buona notizia. Quindi tutto quello che io posso fare per mantenere l'Occidente unito e per rafforzarlo, lo farò. E tutti gli scenari alternativi sono scenari che io ad oggi non voglio prendere neanche in considerazione.
How much Canada stands with Ukraine unequivocally and always, and how much we stand and support him personally as a president, as a leader, as someone who has devoted himself to protecting Ukrainians. I continued to emphasize to him that Canada will always stand with Ukraine. I stand with Vladimir Zelenskyy, and I stand with the people of Ukraine.
So that was the statement by the European leaders. Canada as well coming out to voice their support. In fact, Australia had also spoken up. after the spat in the Oval Office. My colleagues Shinjoy Chaudhary as well as Rishabh are joining us on the broadcast. Rishabh, it's a clear shift from what happened in the United States just a few days ago to now, when the European leaders have all come together in unity in support of Ukraine.
Well, definitely, if we see at the Lancaster House, the European leaders, apart from European leaders, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and others did gather to support Ukraine. It was completely in contrast with what we saw at the Oval Office in Washington day before yesterday, and the way leaders met at the Lancaster House in London yesterday. Be it the bilateral meeting between Zelenskyy and Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, or the trilateral meeting between Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, Emmanuel Macron, the French President, and Zelenskyy in the Lancaster House, or the group meeting that we saw where the European leaders plus Canadian Prime Minister came together to sit down and discuss what next. 4-point agenda has been put forward. A, that there will be a coalition of willing. Whether this means that European countries will stay put with Ukraine and even send their own troops in a NATO-style agreement to Ukraine to defend the borders of Ukraine, that is yet to be cleared. Starmer is very clear that any peace treaty without Ukraine being on table will not be acceptable. Third, to ensure that there will be more economic pressure on Russia. So, in a very clear message from London, the European leaders have said that they stand with Ukraine. But the end question is this support enough? Is this support enough to not have US on board and still support Ukraine? Remember, 119 billion versus what we are seeing, 15 billion dollars coming in for Ukraine. So it remains to be seen how things unfold on that front, but definitely a sigh of relief for Ukraine, given that the neighbors, the continent partners are still standing with him, where now Zelenskyy also says that he's willing to sign the mineral deal with United States, given that here now he's offering olives to White House as well. Given that his position is heard, Ukrainians' position is heard, which is a security guarantee post-ceasefire with Russia.
Okay, all right. So the European leaders saying that they're ready to chart out a plan for peace in Ukraine. Shinjoy, are we going to see a big shift? What does this mean for the United States? Is the United States coming across looking petty? The leaders of the European Union saying that we're looking at a peace plan for Ukraine, even extending loan to Ukraine. But would that be enough? That question still remains.
Well, the most important thing that was said was Keir Starmer saying that he spoke with President Trump last night. Now, we don't know as yet exactly what was said, but the fact that a conversation took place and the fact that he said that America and Britain were as close as any two countries could be are very significant points. Now, America has had an important role all these years. These 3 years, the war has been going on between Russia and Ukraine. Now, President Trump has different points of view. And the whole problem is, even with all of Europe together and Canada and Australia, Ukraine will still need the United States. Not just the economic support, but the military support. Let's not forget that America is a $25 trillion economy. It's the strongest military in the world at this point. By far, it has a very strong military technological complex that no country will have. So when it comes to sophisticated weapons, when it comes to the sheer scale of necessary military equipment, like shells, like artillery shells, which actually Ukraine desperately needs, more than anything else, it needs artillery. And that is something that is very hard to provide for Europe, because Europe doesn't have that military capability as yet. And if it has to start all over again. It will take a while. So that is one. The other point that has to be kept in mind is what Lavrov has said. Sergei Lavrov is the Russian foreign minister, and he makes it very clear that the European involvement will actually complicate the entire proceedings. Now that is some kind of threat that has come from Lavrov, who is a very sharp and intelligent man. Now we have to see how Trump reacts to what has happened in Europe, because you would expect him to say something at this point, or anybody else will have to explain where it stands after what Europe has said and done.
Okay, so after this meeting in the United Kingdom, it will be interesting to see if there's going to be another meeting that will take place with the United States, especially considering Zelenskyy has now said that he is ready to sign the minerals deal with the United States. Rishabh and Ashrinjoy, thank you for joining us with those details. With that, it's time for us to slip into a very quick break here. We'll see you on the other side.